Wait, can you say that again? I didn't catch it. Usually we say that because we aren't fully paying attention. We can all work on improving our listening skills in both our personal and professional communication. Listen all the way to the end for insight into becoming a better listener and using local customs to deepen your relationships with global partners. Okay, you've said something a few times that I don't want to pretend I haven't heard, and that is listening, good listening.
Yeah.
So you said it at the beginning, you kind of said it in the middle, and you just said it again. And I was listening, so I heard it. Um, talk to us. I have heard, people say, oh, listening is a developed skill, but I feel like we all kind of think that listening is easy or that we're good at listening. But you've actually mentioned it in the context of it being something that is a skill. So talk to us about listening.
Yeah, yeah. I think my wife would probably say I'm probably not the best listener. But
My husband would say that too, for sure.
yeah, yeah, I'm probably not the best listener. But I think it's engaged listening is essential, right? Listening for kind of what is being said, and also trying to listen for what is not being said is probably the one component that we all should focus on. Like, what are you really saying, right? Especially when you're negotiating various terms and contracts. And truth be told, it's not a single person's activity, right? Again, this is why you always want a great team. You always want to have, again, a diverse group of uh, of minds in the room, because what I hear may not be what you heard, right? And then you want to take that time, and now you want to kind of, I would say at a certain point you want to bring that group together and say, okay, now let's put on the table what we think we heard, and then try to problem solve. It's hard to solve a problem if we're not listening, if we don't really have an understanding of that they are there, or what's truly behind some of these obstacles or challenges or opportunities we're pursuing. Trying to clarify, right? Trying to probe and ask clarifying questions, which is, you're talking, but the purpose of clarifying it so you can listen a little better, and so that way there's you I think a more detailed understanding of what some of the challenges may be. Um, and the more the better off you are, the better your probability of success, right? If I can really understand what, not just the problem, but the causes of the problem, and what is, kind of precipitating whatever mindset or challenge that any particular endeavor is presenting, then and the ability to achieve the desired outcome is going to be increased.
Do you have any listening hacks that you've developed?
I wear a lot of like little bands and rubber bands, a lot of times if I find myself talking too much, I kind of pop them a little bit just to remind myself to try to listen a little more. It's always great when you have people in the meeting room with you that can kind of tap you a little bit if they think that you're doing more of the talking. I try to be I try to be the last person to speak if I can, which is always good. And I try to, just, and a lot of people see me, they do this, and they don't, this is to, make
You're
sure
like
I don't,
literally physically preventing yourself from talking.
because I like to talk. I like to make friends. So that's probably, again, it's a double-edged sword. So I literally just will do this, and it's just my way to make sure that I'm listening, and I don't talk.
Yep.
So you just kind of just have to find what works for you. And so a lot of times, if there are multiple people in the room, I would say just try to, as best you can, try to let the conversation pass around the room, and maybe reserve your feedback or your comments to be maybe the last person to speak, and go from there. And you know, you know, I'm gonna say try to keep your replies short and sweet. But people that watch this video, I'm like, no, this guy, he tells the longest freaking stories possible. So I know he doesn't do that. But again, we're all a work in progress.
I love it. I love it. Well, so one of the things, besides, obviously that saying we were given two ears and one mouth and are supposed to use them in that proportion. But part of the problem is we can think so much faster than somebody can speak. So we actually have like a whole bunch of processing power left over in our brain. Whenever somebody is speaking, it's actually really hard for us to devote 100% of our brain's processing power onto what they're saying. So I know for me
Mhm.
personally, I have a tendency, and this podcast is actually like really stretching these skills for me because I have a tendency to like, oh, I want to be thinking about what I'm going to say next, or I'm thinking about what I want to ask while you're still talking, right? We do that all the time in lots of our conversations where we aren't actually listening to what they're saying. In our mind, we're listening to our own self prepare our response. And then, like you said, then it becomes much more difficult to maybe
Yeah.
hear, like you said, what isn't being said, or to really get why what is being said, because we aren't actually fully devoted to that conversation. And it is really hard. So I'm glad that you mentioned that a few times. That can be something that I prompt the students to work on some listening building
No,
activities.
no, I think so. I think and you said it, two ears and one mouth, but to add to that, two ears, two eyes, and one mouth. So as a part of your listening, you should also be using your eyes, right, to engage, to really be engaged in the conversation, right? What is that body language looking like? So make it a game, and try to see what can you derive from listening, right? What do I see? What do I hear? Is there something else going on? Is the person are they telling me everything, or am I picking up on something else? Like what else am I picking up on? And then also keep a notepad. I keep a notepad handy, right? Because when I have a thought, I'm just better off jotting it down because depending on who's talking, if you're talking to someone like me and they drone on and on and on, chances are you're going to forget your thought. And so that way, if you write it down, if you make a little note when that person finishes, you can be like, okay, so let me go back because 10 minutes ago I wanted to say this and I had to hold it.
Right, right, right. Or if you're like me, if I don't write it down, like in order to not forget it, I'm spending so much of my brain power remembering it that I'm still not listening fully, right? Instead, I'm still thinking about it. So if you write it down, then you don't have to worry about it. Frees that brain space up again to be able to truly listen.
So let me ask you this question as a professor, right? Because you're in class and I'm sure a lot of times you're going through concepts and you're trying to deliver the the academic content that you're focused on as a student. Would I be permitted to say, you know, uh, Dr. Watson, right? I have a question. I don't want to interrupt you, but can we parking lot this? Because I don't want to forget it. Can you put this on the board or something? Just take this question and then let you get back to your
Oh,
topic. I mean,
yeah.
maybe that's a way to go about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I would have absolutely no problem with that. I think whenever people honestly, even that little stop in the drone, right? Me droning on, that interruption in it actually refocuses attention. So I have no problem. I have no problem with that. Yeah.
So maybe that's something I need to add, right? In a meeting, if somebody's going on, like, hey, listen, can we pause? I just want to let's parking lot this my question. And now it's on the board. Everybody saw it. Now let's let you get back into
Right.
whatever your
Let's
spiel
keep
is.
going. Refocus because
Yeah.
that would honestly probably interrupt people's own side thought conversations that they're having in their own heads, right? Kind of focus everybody on one thing and then get back going. Hey, I actually like that. And I'm actually really glad that you said the eye thing as well. Um, Adding that to the two ears, because as a professor, you get really good at looking and seeing whenever you're starting to lose people, right? Or
Mhm.
whenever there may be, what you're saying you've gone on too long, or it's just not landing very well. Um, so lots of people don't know, but in my previous life, before I was a professor, I was actually a performer. I was a singer and I traveled the country singing. And that
Wow.
skill of actually being able to read an audience live time and make adjustments in order for maximum, in that case it was enjoyment, right? I was doing a concert, I wanted them to get the absolute most out of it. And so it's kind of the same vein, that ability, and you already said it at the very beginning, the ability to adapt. So if you are in the middle of a presentation, and this is what I always try to do for myself, and I always try to tell people, if you aren't prepared enough and you're still so focused on the content of what you're wanting to say because it hasn't really truly been ingrained in you, if you're worrying
Mhm.
about content because it isn't second nature and you haven't practiced enough, then you don't have the capacity or the bandwidth to actually watch, and you aren't going to be able to adjust or adapt on the fly as you see that either some things are working and some things aren't. And so, um, the reverse of listening, right, is being able to present your ideas and your thoughts in a way that's optimal for listening. And so, prepare, and practice. Know the content inside and out so that while you're actually
Mhm.
delivering, you can spend some of that time monitoring and adjusting as opposed to just delivering a rote presentation. Because if you don't say this or in this order, you'll lose it and you'll forget it. And you won't be able to, you won't be able to deliver what you want to say. So,
I love that. That is actually, I think that's, man, that's like pearls that everybody should hang on to, right? Know your content, be a product or a value proposition expert. Because I think also what that will do is it'll slow you down, right? In your delivery. And if you
right.
slow down just a little bit, you can kind of see everything transforming before you. And you're not so focused on rushing through the content. And a lot of times, I mean, if you don't get through all the content, is it the end of the world? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know.
Right.
You know. So
Yeah, absolutely. Allows for another
yeah.
follow-up, especially if it's a sales encounter, right? If there were things they were still really interested in and it wasn't, that the content that you didn't get to wasn't necessarily one of the drivers of a decision, then, if you're reacting and you're responding to what they are giving you, it's more than likely going to have been a positive interaction that's going to lead to another one, at which time you can deliver the rest of the content, right? So
There you go. Get on their page.
absolutely. Um, so if you can, or if you are willing to say, has there been any countries you've operated or worked within that you found particularly difficult or interesting for one reason or another?
Um, hmm. Well, I don't think anything is been very difficult. I think it's always interesting when you think about some language barriers can make things a little challenging. Um, everything is always interesting, right? I mean, that's that's the exciting part about it. Learning new cultures, new traditions, trying to ingrace yourself within that local environment, and wanting to be received very well by your collaborators and your strategic partners. And so, what I find is when if you approach it with a level of humility and sincerity, you usually are embraced very, very well. Um, and so if you come in eager to learn, um, excited about the opportunity, excited about new friendship, new networking opportunities, I mean, you usually are embraced fairly well. I mean, there are some parts in the world where maybe they just don't like Americans as a whole, or they just have this vision of who Americans are. But for the most part, if you show up as an individual and not necessarily here representing the country, we're here for a specific opportunity, and I'm here to um, with not only my kind of aspirations in mind, but I'm here to help you achieve whatever your aspirations are, and you kind of prioritize, them before you. I find that the reception has been tremendously warm, regardless whether it's been in South America or various parts of Africa, Europe, or even Asia Pac for that matter. And
Right.
that's without me being able to speak, uh, very little Spanish, and my Portuguese was awful, and yet and still we found a way to make it work.
Right. So you mentioned ingratiating yourself. How much of that involves immersion in local things like food and drink and customs? And so, especially, we've hung out a little bit, but I don't know you well enough to know if you're a picky eater or if you'll if you're an adventurous eater, if you'll eat anything. Talk to me about chicken feet in China, or
Oh my
those
God.
sorts of things,
Yeah,
those sorts of things where it's like that's part of the ingratiation process.
it
And do you have
is.
any stories about that?
Yeah, no, I think you have to be open. You have to be very, very open. You have to be like, hey, I'll try anything once type. It really, if nothing else, it makes for a great story. And if you want to have, they use this term, if you want to be sticky, where people remember you, where you stand out, if you can attach a great story to an experience, man, you're like cemented in people's memories forever. In fact, I just had I was thinking, I just had dinner with a group out of Ethiopia, and what I found as a part of that dinner is a delicacy in Ethiopia is raw meat, like, and you slice it very thin, and they have this spicy sauce that they dip it in, and you eat raw meat, like not grilled. I mean, so we think of raw, you think, oh, I'm grilled top side,
Right.
bottom, no, this is just meat sliced raw, and you dip it and you eat it. And but what you learn as a part of that experience was why they do it, right? And this dates back to um, uh, World War, and during the World War, what they found was that the opposing forces they were doing everything they can to try to starve out the soldiers of Ethiopia, disrupting supply chain and logistics chains and the ability for them to uh, kind of supply food to their soldiers out in the field. And with that, they had to find other means of survival, and eating raw meat was one of the tactics that they deployed. And after that, it became a delicacy. And so, at this particular dinner, and to my understanding, at most of their formal dinners, there's a point in which there's the opportunity to dine on raw meat. So my wife joined me at the dinner, and she didn't partake, but I'm kind of, hey, listen, if you guys are doing it, I'm doing it too, right? If that's what the local culture custom calls for, then I'm gonna lean into it. Maybe a decision I regret tomorrow, but I deal with that tomorrow, right? Today, I'm one of you guys, right? And so it ended up being a great story, and I think a couple weeks after that, I had another meeting with a group that included the individuals from that dinner, and some more individuals, and the conversation was, you won't believe it, D ate raw meat with us, and so there you go. It's sticky at that point. And so,
Yeah.
so whether it's food, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's history, you want to find a way to ingratiate yourself and to be receptive to whatever those traditions and cultural customs are.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's fun, sometimes daunting, but usually,
Oh,
they like they like being able exactly what you experience, then them being able to tell their Ethiopian colleagues and partners, "Oh yeah, we got Dee to try this,"
yeah,
telling that
yeah, yeah.
story.
You got to be adventurous.
You are the expert, so I don't want to limit what you say to what I ask. So is there something that maybe I have not touched on and I've missed that you would like to add?
No, no, I think we touched on just about everything. Um, uh, I would say, if we talked a little bit before about the most ethical, or should we say unethical practices that are facing us, whether it be geopolitical or operating in different environments. I think it's always important, especially domestically, that we always pay attention to um, things such as DEI, of course, components that are facing minority communities, whether it be Black Americans or minority Americans, right, in corporate America. Um, gaining, the appropriate visibility for professional growth and opportunities, receiving, I guess you would call it executive C-suite mentoring for succession planning, and for those organizations to establish kind of internal opportunity bullpen, so to speak, for individuals to kind of move up in the ranks of corporate America. I think those are initiatives that are important. I think those are initiatives that a lot of the kind of ERG initiatives are being centered around. And so I think as um, young professionals or the students are graduating college and becoming young professionals, I think those are elements that they should inquire about, right? To really understand, what is their, what is a growth opportunity and what is that, or growth limitations, what does that outlook um, uh, projection look like for them? And so I would say just always kind of stay focused on those and pay attention to those. I think they're very, very important for us as business operators.
I feel like students are always like, "Oh, I mean, I'll just take any job. Like, I just want a job." And whenever they hear advice or it's like, look for these things and, you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. They're like, "No, like really, I just want a job." Like I just need to get my foot in the door. I'll take anything. Um,
Yeah.
and it's hard for me to remember back whenever, I was starting out that way and I had that mindset. But you're not the first podcaster who has said it, so I hope it'll sink in that, great talent. And if you're able to communicate, like you said, your potential, great talent is always going to be in demand, no matter what you're hearing in the news about the labor market. And, the tech industry has experienced all of these massive layoffs. I have had so many business owners and hiring managers tell me if I find somebody, I will find a place for that person if I
Mhm.
believe in that person's capabilities and, their ability to contribute to the business. And um, so for those students who are just like, I just want a job, um, know your worth,
Yeah.
right? Know your worth and go after that.
Yeah, know your worth, and you're right, and learn, and knowing your worth sometimes takes some time to really learn your worth, because you're coming out of college and you're trying to figure out what am I worth, right? And so I think you're right. I think everything that you've stated makes sense, right? But I think there is some relativity to what they're saying. Like, I just need a job. There's a saying, there's a phase in life when you know certain things are appropriate. At that stage in life, their perspective of "I just want a job" is appropriate. um, and so the pearls, I think, and the guidance we give, it makes sense at certain stages of life, and so of your professional career. And so I'm an avid golfer, right? We played before. And so when I first started playing golf, man, I used to hit some really bad, I would like to call them a fade, but a real golfer would say that's just a banana ball. You're slicing the ball. But
Right.
uh, I remember when I would play a lot with my father-in-law, my pops, and he would always, I was like, man, I hate hitting that shot. He said, don't worry about that. You keep playing that shot, because as your game improves and your game matures, it's going to come a day when you're going to need to be able to hit that shot because the course calls for it. So just remember what you're doing.
Right.
Right now, it's driving you crazy. It's not the desire, but where your game is, where the maturity of your golf game is.
Right.
Hey, that's the shot. But remember what you did to hit that shot, because as your game matures, you're gonna be like, man, I wish I could hit that slice
Right.
fade right now,
Right. I
because
wish I could slice it
this
to the
course,
right because
I
that's
wish
where
I could
the
slice it to
course
the right.
curves.
So I would say a similar thing for students, right? Like, the, you know, the pearls that we're giving, they may not necessarily be applicable right now, but just hang on to them, because there may come a point when, or there will not may, there will come a point when uh, they will be more relative. They'll make more sense. And then you already have the tools in the bag. Just whip it out, implement it, and you're a step ahead of the curve.
I love that. I love that because I've talked to so many students and they feel so much pressure, right? If they've been given all of this advice, and they feel the pressure to try to maximize and optimize all of it. So thank you for putting a little pressure release valve in this with saying, just add it to your tool belt, use it whenever it's appropriate. I think that
There you
is
go.
a really great way to
Yeah,
end in a piece of advice.
yeah. Tell your students, I started out selling chewing gum, right? I was a part of at that time SIFE at VSU, and my first job was with Wrigley's, and it was selling chewing gum up in the Mid Atlantic for Wrigley's. So, it's not necessarily about where you start. It really comes down to the value you bring, and then how you develop your potential, and then kind of where you scale it from.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much, DeMeakey, for your
Thank
time.
you for having me. Thank you, the infamous Dr. Watson. It's an absolute pleasure.
I think you can tell by watching this that DeMeakey and I had a lot of fun recording this podcast. I hope that you were able to take some of the pearls of wisdom, of which there were plenty shared across this 90-minute conversation in total. I hope that you can take some of them and put them to great use now or at some time in the future.